The email arrived on a Wednesday morning, sandwiched between a newsletter about skincare and a sale at my favorite boutique. Sophia, this is official notice. I'm filing a lawsuit against you for the $16,000 you owe me. If you refuse, legal action will follow. Let's keep this civil. I reread it twice. My husband, Nathan, was suing me over money that wasn't his, over money that belonged to me, left by my over money he wanted to take for another woman, a woman who, by blood, was his own half-sister. I didn't throw my phone across the room or break down crying. I didn't even curse under my breath. Instead, I calmly took a sip of my coffee and exhaled slowly. I should have seen this coming. My name is Sophia, and at 33, I just received the most callous betrayal of my life. But while Nathan is probably savoring his triumph, picturing me shattered, broken, begging for answers, I'm not crying. For years, Nathan had been planting the seeds. Little comments, carefully placed suggestions, offhand remarks that at the time seemed harmless. Sophia, you know Olivia has had a tough life, right? Or my sister didn't get the same opportunities you did. Maybe you could help her out a little. And at first, I didn't see the danger because why would I suspect my own husband of trying to con me? Because Olivia wasn't just some random girl. She was Nathan's half-sister. Same father, different mothers. And that's exactly how she slipped through the cracks. When my grandparents passed, they left behind a sum of $300,000 in my name. It wasn't an inheritance in the traditional sense. There were conditions. The money was meant to be distributed fairly among any biological siblings I had, except I didn't have any. That should have been the end of the conversation. But Nathan saw an opening, and Olivia saw an opportunity. It started slow. Conversations about family, fairness, sharing what we have with those who are less fortunate. I love Nathan, and I believed he loved me. So when he gently suggested that Olivia, his half-sister, was like a sister to me, I didn't question it. You don't have any siblings, babe. Isn't it kind of sad to keep it all to yourself? Olivia never had stability. Don't you think she deserves a shot? It was never about the money, not at first. It was about the emotional manipulation. And piece by piece, I fell for it. By the time I realized what was happening, I had already agreed to give Olivia $100,000. I thought it was fair. I thought it was enough. I was so wrong. The moment the transfer was complete, Olivia changed. She stopped calling, stopped pretending to be the sweet, struggling younger sister. She avoided me at family gatherings, responded with one-word texts, and suddenly, Nathan had more business trips. It was a few weeks later that I found out why. Nathan wasn't just giving Olivia my money, he was giving her everything. His time, his attention, his loyalty, himself. The night I found out, it wasn't through dramatic confessions or a scandalous voicemail, it was a text, one Nathan never meant for me to see. I can't wait until we're finally free. Just a little longer, baby. She doesn't suspect a thing. I stared at the screen, the words blurring together. I knew the she was me. I knew the we was him and Olivia. My stomach dropped, but my mind went deadly calm. They weren't just using me. They were planning to leave together, but not before they bled me dry. When I didn't cave to Nathan's emotional blackmail for the remaining money, he escalated. Olivia must have convinced him that he was entitled to it because within days I received his lawsuit. $16,000, not even a life-changing amount, but enough to assert dominance, to humiliate me, to force me into submission. He claimed I hadn't fulfilled the conditions of my inheritance, that Olivia, as my adopted sister, had a right to a full half of the estate, and that by refusing to pay the remaining amount, I was stealing from my own family. He wanted to break me. What he didn't realize was I was already preparing for war. Because Nathan wasn't the only one with secrets. A week later, I received an Instagram message from someone named Chris. Hey, I think we're related. I nearly ignored it, but something about his words felt different. I clicked his profile. His last name was familiar, too familiar. Chris was also Nathan's half-sibling, but from a different woman. And guess what? Chris had a trust fund too. Turns out Nathan's father had been spreading his DNA far and wide and had set up multiple inheritance accounts for his other illegitimate children, which meant Olivia had her own damn money this whole time. She never needed mine. I hired a lawyer. I compiled everything, the messages, the manipulation, the emotional blackmail, the lawsuit, and then I dropped the nuke. I exposed Olivia's hidden inheritance to the entire family. I made sure Nathan's mother saw the texts between him and Olivia. And when the truth came out, Nathan's world collapsed overnight. His own mother disowned him, his lawsuit got thrown out, and Olivia, she disappeared the second things got hard. She took what she could and ran. Nathan lost everything. Me? I walked away. Not just with my inheritance, not just with my dignity, but with the satisfaction of knowing that the two people who tried to destroy me destroyed themselves instead. And that was the best revenge of all. My husband thought he won until I showed him who he was dealing with. Nathan sat across from me at the kitchen table, swirling his coffee like a man who had just struck gold, smug, relaxed, arrogant as hell. "You're making this harder than it needs to be, babe." He leaned back in his chair, stretching like a king surveying his kingdom, my kingdom. "I don't want things to get ugly," I smiled, a smile, polite smile. The kind you give a waiter when they forget your order but you're too civilized to make a scene. Ugly? I tilted my head. "You're suing me over money that doesn't belong to you. I'd say we've already crossed that line." He exhaled, shaking his head like I was a child who just didn't understand. "You're being dramatic. Olivia deserves her share, and you know it." Olivia, the half-sister he suddenly cared so much about, the woman he spent hours texting, meeting in secret, whispering about behind my back, the woman he planned to run away with using my money. I folded my arms. "Olivia isn't my sister, Nathan. She's your half-sister, and my grandparents didn't leave her a dime." His jaw twitched, just for a second, a crack in the perfect facade. "Family is about more than blood, Sophia," he said smoothly, like a salesman pitching a deal too good to refuse. "You've always said you wanted a sister, and Olivia sees you that way. She loves you." I almost laughed, the audacity. "That's funny," I mused, "because the last time I saw Olivia, she couldn't even look me in the eye." His smirk faltered, just a little. But then he recovered, flashing that charming bullshit grin that once made me fall for him. "Look, let's be reasonable," he said. "You have the money. You're not struggling. You already gave her 100 grand. What's another 16? I leaned forward, mirroring his posture. "Then why not use your own money?" Nathan blinked. "What? If you're so concerned about Olivia's well-being, why don't you pull 16 grand from your account and give it to her?" Silence. A beat too long, and there it was, the truth. Nathan didn't want to help Olivia. Nathan wanted to control me. He wanted me to bend, fold, cave, to prove that his manipulation still worked. When I didn't say anything, he sighed and reached across the table, resting his hand on mine. Soft, reassuring, fake. "Come on, babe," he coaxed. "I'm just trying to do what's right. Let's not make this a fight. We don't have to go to court. We can settle this peacefully." I smiled again, this time with teeth. "Oh, we'll settle this," I murmured, "just not the way you think." That was the last civil conversation we had. The next day, Olivia went full scorched earth. She posted a long, teary-eyed rant on social media about how I was hoarding the family's inheritance, claiming I was manipulative, selfish, and cruel. She tagged Nathan, his family, my family, mutual friends. The comments rolled in almost instantly. How could Sophia do this? Olivia has always been so sweet. She doesn't deserve this. Nathan's right. Marriage is about sharing. She's acting like a gold digger. A gold digger? The irony made my stomach turn. I didn't respond. Not publicly, because this wasn't just Olivia's doing. Nathan was behind this. I saw it in the calculated way she worded her post, in the strategic way she tagged certain people. This was his move, a coordinated attack to make me look like the villain. And for a moment, it worked. My phone buzzed with messages from relatives asking me to just do the right thing and keep the peace. Nathan's mother called, her voice laced with disappointment. "Sweetheart, I don't know what's gotten into you. Olivia is family. You can't just cut her off like this." Family, that word again. I wanted to scream. Instead, I took a breath. "Did Nathan tell you why I cut her off?" Silence. Of course he didn't, because if he did, she'd know about the text messages. The ones I found weeks ago. The ones where Nathan promised Olivia they'd be together soon. The ones where Olivia asked Nathan if he thought I suspected. The ones where Nathan assured her that I was too blind to see what was right in front of me. I clenched my jaw, gripping my phone. I could destroy them both right now, but not yet. Not until I had everything I needed. So I sighed, playing the role of the exhausted, misunderstood wife. "Look, I need some space. I'll talk to Nathan when I'm ready." Another pause, then a reluctant, "All right, sweetheart, just don't let pride get in the way of family." I hung up, and then I started preparing for war. Nathan thought he had me cornered. He thought I'd crumble under the pressure. He thought I'd beg for mercy, for peace, for forgiveness. He thought wrong, because while he was busy celebrating his victory, I was gathering my evidence. Bank statements, transfer records, the lawsuit, the texts, and then I got a message from a stranger, a man named Chris. "Hey, I think we need to talk. I'm your husband's half-brother, and I think you should know what Nathan's been hiding." I stared at the message, my pulse steady. Game on. The message sat in my inbox for almost an hour before I opened it. A simple greeting from a man named Chris. "I think we need to talk. I'm Nathan's half-brother." I barely blinked. Another half-sibling? Not surprising. Nathan's father had a reputation, a man who made bad decisions and left messes for others to clean up. But I wasn't interested in family drama. I had enough of my own. I was about to delete the message when the second part caught my eye. "I think you should know what Nathan's been hiding." That made me pause. I exhaled slowly, thumb hovering over the screen before finally typing back. "I'm listening." Chris wasn't vague. He wasn't cryptic. He laid it all out in brutal detail. Nathan and Olivia weren't struggling. They weren't desperate. They weren't victims of my so-called selfishness. They were frauds. Greedy, manipulative frauds who had been playing me for months, maybe years, because while Nathan had been fighting for Olivia's rightful inheritance, he conveniently forgot to mention one very important detail. She already had her own. Nathan's father had set up multiple accounts, one for each of his children, the illegitimate ones at least. Chris had one. Another half-sibling I'd never heard of had one, and Olivia, she had a trust fund, with more than enough to survive. She didn't need my money. She just wanted it. The realization came slow and cold, wrapping around my spine like ice. I thought about the way Nathan had framed everything, the guilt-laced words, the quiet insistence that Olivia deserves this, and we have to be fair, the way he let me believe she was struggling when in reality she was sitting on her own fortune. It wasn't about money, it was about control. Nathan knew exactly what he was doing when he manipulated me. Olivia knew exactly what she was doing when she played the innocent, naive little sister, and now, after everything, they thought they had me backed into a corner, they thought they were winning. That was the moment I knew I wasn't just going to fight back, I was going to ruin them. I didn't waste time. I forwarded the trust fund details to my lawyer. The lawsuit was already weak, built on emotional manipulation rather than legal merit, but now it was nothing more than a desperate, baseless grab. I let my lawyer handle that part while I focused on something far more satisfying, tearing down the house of lies Nathan and Olivia had built. I started with Olivia. She was the weak link. Nathan was calculated, but Olivia, she thrived on validation. She needed to be the victim, the wounded bird, and wounded birds made mistakes. The cracks showed almost immediately. The moment the family got wind of Chris's existence and his inheritance, Olivia panicked. The narrative she had spun, the poor sister who was unfairly cut out, started to fall apart. And when people started asking questions, she did what desperate people do. She lied. She denied everything at first, claiming Chris was mistaken. Then she tried to downplay the trust fund, acting as if it were pennies compared to what I had. And when that didn't work, She turned on Nathan. The texts were almost comical. "This was your idea. You told me she'd never find out. Fix this, Nathan. Fix this." I could almost hear the panic in her voice, the sharp edges of betrayal cutting through whatever loyalty they once shared. It was delicious. Then came the final blow. Nathan had always been good at playing the role of the devoted husband. He knew how to pretend, how to twist reality just enough to make himself look like the reasonable one. But under pressure, he cracked. When his mother found out, when she saw the texts, the lawsuit, the manipulation, she didn't just turn against him, she threw him out. She had always been his safety net, the person who excused his behavior, enabled his decisions. But there was something about this particular betrayal that she couldn't stomach. Maybe it was because Olivia was involved. Maybe it was because of the sheer audacity of what he'd tried to pull. Either way, she made her choice. Nathan was cut off. No money, no support, no home. And Olivia, well, without Nathan, she had no shield, no one to soften the blows, no one to clean up the mess. And just like that, her victim narrative crumbled. Her trust fund was exposed. People saw her for what she was, a liar, a manipulator, a fraud. The best part? I didn't have to lift a finger. They destroyed themselves. I wish I could say Nathan fought harder, that he at least tried to recover, to salvage whatever dignity he had left, but he didn't. He went down exactly the way I expected him to, flailing, blaming everyone but himself. He tried to get Olivia back. She ignored him. He tried to reconcile with his mother. She refused. And when he had nowhere left to go, he sent me one final message. "You didn't have to do this." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say, because I didn't do this to him. He did it to himself. Natha never saw it coming. For weeks, he strutted around like a man who had already won. He spoke with certainty, smiled with arrogance, walked with the confidence of someone who thought the world bent to his will. He thought he had broken me. He was wrong. By the time the truth about Olivia's secret inheritance started spreading, the cracks in his plan were already turning into gaping holes. His smug facade wavered, his carefully orchestrated narrative collapsing under its own weight. But still, he held on, convinced he could spin this, convinced he could charm, manipulate, or threaten his way back into control. Then I sent the email. It was simple, clean, precise. I attached screenshots of Olivia's financial records, proof of her hidden trust fund, and copies of every single message they had exchanged about me, their manipulation, their plans, their certainty that I was too blind, too weak to stop them. And I sent it to everyone, his mother, his employer, his closest friends, every single person in his life who still thought he was a decent man. I didn't need to add any commentary. The evidence spoke for itself. It took less than an hour for the fallout to begin. The first crack came from his mother. She had always defended him, always smoothed over his messes, always made excuses. But there are some things a mother can't ignore. Maybe it was the lawsuit, maybe it was the emotional manipulation, or maybe it was the sick, twisted betrayal of pretending to help his own sister while secretly plotting to steal from me. Whatever it was enough. She threw him out. Not a soft, reluctant dismissal, not a let's take some time apart kind of exile. No. She packed his things in trash bags and left them on the porch. She made sure everyone saw. Nathan must have thought she would come around, that after a few days she would calm down, that he could smooth talk his way back in. But when he tried to call her, she didn't pick up. When he showed up at her door, she had the locks changed. She was done. The second crack came at work. Nathan had been sloppy, too confident. He had used his company email for some of his correspondence with Olivia, discussing the lawsuit, planning his next steps, even gloating about how he would bleed me dry, so I sent that to his boss. And just like that, Nathan was unemployed. The third and final crack, the one that truly shattered him, came from Olivia. Nathan must have assumed she would stick around, that they would weather the storm together, that maybe with enough time they could still escape, still start fresh somewhere new. He underestimated her. The moment she realized there was nothing left to gain, Olivia disappeared. No calls, no messages, nothing. She packed up and left, without him. I later found out she had drained what was left of his personal savings before she walked away, leaving him with almost nothing. She had spent months playing the role of the devoted sister, but in the end, she was only ever devoted to herself. By the time Nathan realized what was happening, it was already over. His mother had abandoned him. His job was gone. The lawsuit was in ruins. And Olivia, she had done to him exactly what they had both tried to do to me. She had taken what she wanted, and when there was nothing left, she left him behind to rot. I wish I could say I felt something watching him crumble, some satisfaction, some smugness, some triumphant sense of justice, but honestly, I felt nothing. Nathan was a void, a black hole of greed and manipulation and arrogance. He had spent years convincing himself that he was the smartest person in the room, that he could outthink, outmaneuver, outplay anyone who stood in his way. But in the end, he wasn't a mastermind. He was just a fool, and fools always fall. I didn't reach out, I didn't gloat, I didn't send a final message to rub salt in the wound because there was nothing left to say. Nathan had destroyed himself, I just handed him the match. Nathan was a ghost before he even left town. Word spread fast, faster than even I expected. His disgrace wasn't quiet or gradual, it was instant, brutal, public. His mother refused to speak his name, and his friends distanced themselves, not wanting to be associated with a man who had tried to con his own wife. His job gone, his money wiped out by the very woman he betrayed me for. I heard whispers about where he was staying, a rundown motel on the outskirts of town, living off what little cash he had left. I imagined him there, staring at the stained ceiling, playing back every mistake, every miscalculation, realizing that every person he thought he could use had turned their back on him. I could have gone to see him, could have stood at his door, watched him sit in his own ruin, forced him to look me in the eye. But why? Nathan wasn't worth my time. He never had been. Instead, I focused on myself, my life, my future. I transferred the remaining money from my inheritance into investments, bought the house I always wanted, reclaimed everything he had tried to take from me. And Olivia, she disappeared just as fast as she had arrived. Last I heard, she had skipped town, moving on to her next target. Maybe she'd find another man to manipulate, another life to sink her claws into, but I knew one thing. She would never be able to spin this as my fault again. She had been exposed, and people saw her for exactly what she was. One day, months later, I received an email from Nathan. Short, desperate. "We need to talk." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Nathan thought he could destroy me. Instead, he destroyed himself, and I walked away, untouched, untethered, and completely free. Nathan thought he could break me, but in the end, he was the one who shattered. I didn't need revenge. I just needed to let him fall under the weight of his own greed. And he did. Now, I'm curious. If you were in my shoes, would you have handled it the same way? Or would you have made him suffer even more? Let me know. What would your ultimate revenge be?